New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Good morning, everyone. It's so great to be back on the network. Here I am. And, we're finishing up part one, and I am doing a summary of part one. Here we go. I'm back. It looks like I keep popping in and out. So we are doing the summary of part one of this wonderful Science of Mind textbook. And, I am always amazed by what I see when I reread the Science of Mind textbook. There's always something that appears new, or maybe I have a different take on it when I go through it again. And, it's sort of like that upward spiral that we're always talking about, that as we evolve, we're going in this upward spiral. And I think that's the same thing when we're doing this reading. When we go through it once and we go around the circle, right? Well, not quite a circle, because that circle has no beginning or no end. And then we come to a point and we digest that. And then the next time around, there's something else that is there for us to look at. So I enjoy going through the Science of Mind textbook so much. So I didn't introduce myself, but my name is going on the banner. I'm Rev Victoria Bomberry. And, I'm part of the team here doing these Saturday morning discussions. And I just want to let people know that we love to have a dialogue. So if you have questions or comments, please put them in the chat, and I'll be looking at those comments as we go through, and I'll try to acknowledge people as I see people come in. And I'm happy to see Wayne here this morning, and I will try to greet people as people join. So I am so happy to start this off, to talk about 128 pages that we've already covered this year of the Science of Mind textbook. And let me put my glasses on so I can see a little bit better. So we are looking at, I'm going to look at the second paragraph on page 129. We have every reason to postulate a threefold nature of the universal being, which we shall call spirit, soul, and body. We shall think of spirit as the great actor, soul as the medium of its action, and body the result of its action. We shall think of spirit as the only conscious actor, the power that knows itself. We shall think of soul as a blind force, obeying the will of spirit. And we shall think of body as the effective spirit working through law to produce form. And before I go into this, I just want to say that in the first paragraph, we get this very powerful sentence: there is a formless stuff in the universe, forever taking form and forever changing its form. This we may accept as being self-evident. And, somehow I really resonate with that sentence. And when we think about spirit working through law to create form, to me, that is just so incredible that we have this constant change that's taking place, that there is endless form taking shape. So creation is ongoing. It's something that's happening at all times. It's not something that happened uh, millions of years ago or billions of years ago, and that's it. No, it's something that is constantly changing, and that form is changing. So when we look at, the Buddhists, one of the things that they always point out for us is that change is, that's just the nature of the universe, is change. And for some of us, in this human form, sometimes we don't like to think about change. We think, oh, I like it just the way it is right now. I don't want any kind of change. I like everything that I'm doing. I like this, I like that. I don't want to have any change. But change is that creative process working throughout our lives, working throughout the universe in that eternal now. So that change is the nature of being. And sometimes this may sound a little bit uh, complicated, but what we're looking at is just this threefold nature of universal being. And I kind of wanted to look at universal being because sometimes we might think that's like a being, or like an entity, but it is more that active process of being. Um, And I'm going to say that it's active because it, in its presence as being, it is still in that creative process that never stops, that's continuous. So, what Ernest Holmes is telling us here is that spirit is consciousness. These other two parts are are a part of the threefold nature of the universe, but spirit is the consciousness. So spirit is through everything. That consciousness is through everything. The soul is the medium of the action. And I don't want us to get too caught up in this because sometimes my head will spin if I get too caught up in this. Let's just accept that soul is the medium of its action. So, and the body is the result of that action. So we have consciousness, which knows itself. Oh, isn't that amazing? Just saying that is just incredible. That consciousness knows itself, that spirit knows itself. And remember that great adage, to know thyself. That is our work here as spiritual beings. We are here to know ourselves in the same way that spirit knows itself. So that's the great awakening that we are embarked upon as we live our lives. And in this discussion, spirit had this idea that went into soul and came out as us, as humanity, and as each individual person within humanity. And that's pretty amazing. That's pretty amazing that we are made of that God stuff. We have everything that God has. It's just wonderful. And in the next paragraph, Ernest Holmes writes, the evolution of humanity brings it arbitrarily to a place where true individuality functions. So true individuality, that's a word that especially in the United States is almost there's almost a cult of individuality. People are rugged individualists. They stand on their own. There's all these pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. There's all these kinds of sayings that have kind of supported this cult of individuality in the United States, and it's kind of exported in different ways throughout the planet. But let's look at this. What does it mean, really? True individuality. What does that mean? It doesn't mean that we are ensconced in our ego as individual egos working. True individuality means that we know ourselves as something that is much greater than that small individual ego. And it is eternal. That is the eternal part of ourselves that continues, is that true individuality. So when I think about myself, and I think about when I make my transition, you know, I might think, well, it sure would be wonderful just to be Victoria for ever and ever. And yet that's not really who I am. It's a part of who I am. It's a part of who I've come to be in this incarnation. But there's so much more beyond the ego. There is that deep knowing of ourselves as spiritual beings, as those emanations of God. So, that makes us so much bigger than an individual ego or individuality as we may think of it, on a daily basis. Yes, of course we're individuals. Of course we're unique. Of course we have all these gifts that we bring, which is wonderful, but we have to shift our thinking a little bit here to understand that when we know ourselves, there is a shift from ego into that divine being. And as we shift into that divine being, uh, things change dramatically. We're no longer run by ego. We're no longer hemmed in by expectations or survival mechanisms. We are keyed into that divine creative process where we are truly in alignment with the divine. We've just lined up. We're right there. We know God, and we are in that creative process. And, of course, as individuals, in the popular sense, when we've thought about that in the past, people are able to accomplish quite a bit. We've been able to make progress in a lot of areas in terms of um, feeding people, housing people, clothing people, all of those kinds of basic necessities that we need. We've been able to do uh, wondrous things with that. And at the same time, that goodness can also be corrupted by greed, which is one of the things that seems to poison a lot of what we do. And when we go down that road, we forget to look at good. When we are acting as those true individuals, those divine spiritual beings, goodness is always at the forefront of everything. What is the good? What is the good that I'm here to reveal to humanity, for humanity? What is that good, that goodness that I am here to reveal. See, there's a shift there. It's not about accumulating wealth, and that's sort of what we've been on. We've been on this train that is about accumulating wealth, and and we see it all over the place where there's people who have billions and billions of dollars, which they'll never be able to spend, and it it's accumulated at the expense of the good that could do in the world. So that individuality or ego takes off in this direction where the goodness is left behind, and there's a big loss for that individual, that rugged individual, in terms of being able to participate actively in the creative process that gives good to all. And I think this is an interesting line in the next paragraph. Excuse me. Man never creates, he discovers and uses. Through this method, all sciences are evolved. We live in a universe of law through which runs a spirit of self-knowing intelligence. All's love, yet all is law, mused Robert Browning. So humanity never creates. It discovers and uses. And oftentimes we get very self-centered and focus on that individual, and think we're creating, but we only discover what's already there. All these laws that run the universe, that we're learning more and more about, we're discovering them, and we're discovering how to use those laws to create things that are useful for us. And that's the key, really, to look at that goodness, to know that goodness is a part of everything that we do. Everything that we have is from the goodness and the gift of spirit. And when we when we stay true to that, we understand that we're only uncovering all these gifts that have already been given to us. We're gaining knowledge, and as we gain knowledge, we learn how to use these laws and these principles for the good of all. Now, and for ourselves too. I don't want to say we're not important. Yes, every single person is important. Everyone is important. And we're also all unified in this incredible field of creation. And we don't know what is happening in other parts of the universe. Uh, you know, I am absolutely sure that there is intelligence everywhere, in the form of God, especially, right? That's intelligence. Um, and there is life, all kinds of life that we have no idea about. So, as human beings, we have a responsibility to be in alignment with good that works here on our planet, but also has an effect on every part of the universe, because we're all interconnected. We are all interconnected. So let's look. Let's take a look at. Let's see. On page 130, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth paragraph in the last line. And Ernest Holmes states that human beings are a thinking center in the universal mind. So we are, we're kind of like, I guess, we're kind of like, well, let's make ourselves as large as we are. We are a thinking center. So each individual is a thinking center in the universal mind. That's a very powerful statement. That is a very powerful statement for us to have. That we are a thinking center. So as a thinking center, we are called to pay attention to our thoughts, right? What are we thinking about? What are we putting into that medium that will act on our thoughts? So what we focus on is what will be the outcome in our lives. So thought matters. And this is probably the most important thing that we do in religious science is talk about thought. And we have millions of thoughts throughout our life. But so, we don't have to be overly concerned about every single thought. We let them go. If a thought goes by and it's something that is just passing and fleeting, we just let it pass by, right? We let it go. But what we focus on is what we experience in our lives. And we can try that, right? We can try that for ourselves and realize that that is the truth of that's the truth. What we focus on in our thought, that's how our lives end up being. If we're focusing on the goodness of life and the positivity of life, then we'll have a very different experience than someone who is cynical and sees the worst in every situation. And that will be a completely different outcome for life than someone who has a more positive way of looking at things. And that doesn't mean that positivity ignores things that require attention. What it means is that we have our thoughts attuned to God. We are in that positiveness, that goodness, and we see that every experience that we have has some good within it, that can be shared and used by others. So that is what we do as we realize that. When we realize that everything, and he goes on to say, in the visible world is an effect. That back of all effects are ideas, which are the real cause of these effects. The divine ideas are perfect, but humanity's freedom of individuality causes them to appear imperfect. Through right thinking, he is able to uncover the appearance of imperfection and reveal the perfect idea. And he quotes scripture here from the Bible saying, "Behold thou my face forevermore." And that's the old language using thou. And there's a something very sweet about it, right? Thou. That's a relationship that is so sweet and so close. So when we're beholding the face of God, we are in that alignment and we are able to reveal the perfect idea. We're still learning as humanity, right? We're still in that learning phase, gathering knowledge, learning about how the laws of the universe work. And we need these guideposts like, look at the good, look at the goodness, look at this, Keep your eyes on God as you are thinking so that you can reveal that perfect thought of God, that perfect idea, the divine idea that is located in all of us. We have divine ideas. Someone told me the other day, we did an exercise, and the exercise was, why do you matter? And I asked, why do you matter? And the person answered, because I have wonderful ideas. And that's what we're going for, right? We're going for that wonderful idea that is the divine idea, that God idea, that perfect idea. And then we can see the effect that it has. And that's what, what this manifest universe is about, that there's effects. So when we have that idea that is good, is that perfect idea, what we get is that perfection that is God. Let's see. Let's go down to the last paragraph. And I think this underscores more what we've been talking about this morning. Spirit thinks or knows within itself, and as a result of this interaction, creation manifests. Creation is the play of life upon itself through divine self-imagination. Spirit must create in order to be expressed. That just gives me goosebumps. Spirit must create in order to be expressed. So spirit is always creating. Spirit is always expressing itself. And, we can be a part of that. We can be a part of that expression of spirit. And we are, And as we know ourselves more, we can express more of spirit. Divine self-imagination. So imagination is an active property, right? That's a divine property, the imagination. And I think Einstein is the one who said that imagination was one of the greatest powers that we have as human beings. And that is because it is a divine gift that we've been given, that imagination. And we only have to look around, right, to see just the delight that there is on our planet, right? And that's all been created by spirit, through the imagination, through these divine ideas. So that's all been created, and it's an expression of God. And I'm just thinking about things that we see, that delight us. I was I was in Los Angeles at the lake retreat of Yogananda. And on that lake, there's these beautiful swans, and I don't necessarily see swans all that often on lakes, but there's a whole flock of swans. I think that's what they're called, a flock of swans, and they were swimming on the water, and then the light started playing on the water, and the light it was as if it were alive, right? It was reflecting and it was just playing on the water and shimmering and doing all kinds of things that seemed supernatural, right? Because it was so delightful and so beautiful. And, all I could think of was that is the creator playing on this water. That is spirit playing on this water. So we get to see this all over in action from, a experience like this, and, seeing seeing the face of a beloved. Oh, the list goes on. It's endless where we see that play of spirit right here and right now, you know, on a daily basis, if we're open to see it. And we can't imagine the knowingness of spirit, right? It's infinite. Spirit is infinite. And its knowingness is also infinite. And it knows itself completely. And when we talk, sometimes we talk about having the faith of God. And I believe that when we have the faith of God, that we are in that place of pure spirit, right? Because God knows itself, it's all knowing. It has that pure faith that whatever it does is good, is goodness. It knows itself that completely. And that's where that's our birthright, to know ourselves that completely. And in the last paragraph on page 132, it begins on page 132. There's but one mind in the universe, and humanity uses it. Humanity is an identity in the universe, a center of God consciousness. At first, he is ignorant of this and misuses his power, consequently bringing on himself misfortune and negation. And that's just a stage of evolution, right? That that we're in, and we're moving through that now to another stage where we will have. I think we're moving into the wisdom times. Is what I think. I think that that's where our next iteration will be, is in wisdom times, where we've gained knowledge of laws of the universe, and we are applying them through keeping our eye on goodness, being completely aware of the ramifications of the things that we do, the things that we set in motion, and we do it from that well of love for humanity. And, we know that there's people who are working in all different areas, and they have their eye on that goodness to create things that are beneficial to humanity. And I think that that is where we're moving, where this is available to everyone, that these gifts that people bring into our lives are available to everyone. And that's where wisdom resides, when we are able to share with all and understand that we are all one and are deserving of all those gifts that we create as a human species. In the next paragraph, right toward the end of it, he writes, "There is no limit to the law. Limitation is not inherent in the law, but is a result of humanity's inability to embody the truth and constructive use of the law." So when we run up against limitation, there's no limitation in the law, but we haven't figured out how to constructively use the law yet. And that is another one of our charges to do while we're here. And to learn how to constructively use the law. We have it at our disposal, right? Ernest Holmes says that. We have the law at our disposal. We can use it. And and it is limitless. And when we are one with God, he uses this term subjective, right? And subjective in this case means we are subject to these laws, but we are subject of God. So it's kind of that idea of we're not subjugated, but we are subject to the laws of the universe, the law of God. So in and of ourselves, we can make some pretty big mischief in and of ourselves. But when we're aligned with God, we use the law in its limitless fashion. There's no limit to it. We run up against limits when we are not in alignment with God. And it gets cut off because it's not going to work. It can't work like that. We'll have the destructive aspects show up rather than those things that will be of use to ourselves and others. He goes on to talk about freedom. And, we talk about freedom a lot in religious science. And I think when we talk about freedom, we're talking about that pathway to freedom. And, I think I'm just going to read this because I think this sums up what I've been talking about a lot and what I've been in dialogue with Ernest Holmes this morning. Great as the subconscious is, its tendency is set in motion by the conscious thought. And in this lies the possibility of and the pathway to freedom. Okay. We have a lot of things that are in our subconscious. We have experiences that have been traumatic to us. We have all kinds of things that are residing in our subconscious. And, hidden desires, just different things that are subconscious. And because they're subconscious, that means we're not conscious of them. And what sets those things into motion is conscious thought. So before I was talking about how we can have a certain mindset, right? And create things that are good. Well, when we're being run by the subconscious, we bring it into our consciousness and then we run with something before it has been fully processed and known by us, then we get an outcome that isn't good. But once we get into that conscious thought and that purification process of knowing, and I think this is where forgiveness comes in oftentimes. We're forgiving something that has been traumatic to us. We're working, we're having our consciousness work on that. And I'm thinking about kind of like we're masticating it, we're digesting it, and we're coming to that point where we realize in our consciousness grows when we realize that, I'll just use an example. Someone has done us wrong, that they were doing the very best that they could at that moment. And then we can move into some compassion, which feeds our conscience, our consciousness. It brings us up. That's the pathway to freedom, I believe, that Ernest Holmes is talking about. That is the pathway to freedom. When we become conscious, those subconscious things come to it. We masticate with our consciousness. We maybe think about rocks tumbling and being polished, right? And they turn into gems. That's what happens. Then we are on the pathway to freedom because we realize that every experience that we have has a lesson for us, a lesson that can be useful for our lives and useful for others. You know, that's why we love stories from the sacred texts. Those are experiences that someone has had, and they've gone through them, and they come to the wisdom point, right? And that is what feeds our spirit, our souls, that wisdom. So that is the road to freedom. And when he goes on to say, freedom and bondage, sickness and health, poverty and riches, heaven and hell, good and bad, big and little, and all conditions which appear to be opposite are not really the result of the operation of opposing powers, but are the way the one power is used. So he's pointing toward a non-duality here, that there is only one power, one presence in you and I, in all the world, and that power is living spirit. Oh my goodness, we're almost at the end of our program, and I want to just round this out with this last two sentences in this chapter. Humanity already has within itself the key to freedom, but it must come to realize its relation to the whole. This relationship is one of complete unity. Complete unity. And that is what we are seeking, that complete union with God. And that's the mystic's way, right? That complete union with God. To understand that, absolutely, that this is what we are. This is what we are. We are in complete unity with Source, with living spirit. We have all of this goodness right at our fingertips. So as we go into our next week, let's just remember that we are on the pathway to freedom. And when we realize our unity with the one, then that's when we will have evolved to the next level of being. So all of you have a wonderful week. I am so happy to be here and be present with you today. And I just want to remind you that this program is brought to you by this wonderful media organization, and donations are the way that it continues. And all of us love to be here with you. All the programming here is done by people who just love to be with you and to have discussions with you. And we can support this wonderful organization so we can get these ideas out into the world and we can discuss them and we can find out how they're working in our lives. And I want to say that I am happy and joyful today as a result of using these tools and this wisdom that was compiled by Ernest Holmes. So have a lovely week. See you next time.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors and donors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown Atlanta, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Spiritual Center Kitchener, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, and all of our individual donors and sponsors. Thank you for being a part of the New Thought Media Network. Please come be you.